A very good evening to you and welcome to Crime Must Fall Show. Tonight we focus on aviation and security. 3 days from now, the United States of America and the entire world will be commemorating 19 years after the disaster that happened, the bombing of the World Trade Center in September 2001. And in 2014, we had the Malaysian 370 plane that got disappeared up to now. In the year 1988, we had the Lockerbie disaster where someone took in the bomb, and then as the plane was taking off in the airport, it went down. We are joined by Mr. Jitesh Chavda, who is a pilot with the Kenya Airways. We are also joined with Mr. Frederick Malu, who is also a member of PCAK and a pilot with 18 years experience. We are also joined by Mr. Kavit Dave, who is a pilot working with the Kenya Airways and also a member of PCAK, and he has a deeper experience on matters security of the aeroplanes. Mr. Frederick Malu also does investigations on matters to do with aircraft accidents. My name is Cornelius Omuse and I welcome you into this discussion. It is a discussion that affects you, and just even in the morning as I was talking to a friend, he cracked a joke, but later on he came online when we told him actually that the security of aviation affects everyone. Those who use the planes and those ones who don't use the planes. Join us in this discussion. Remember, this discussion is also live on our Facebook page, KAK TV Kenya. Our YouTube channel is KAK TV Kenya. Gentlemen, welcome to Crime Must Fall Show tonight.
Thank you very much.
This is your first time to be here, and maybe briefly we can still have a look on what is happening currently in the country as far as the COVID-19 pandemic is concerned, and a number of matters. I'd like to get from you, what do you read at the end of the tunnel? What is it that you're seeing? Are we almost getting out of this matter, or what are you seeing?
Oh, well,
Malu,
thank you very much.
with the numbers going down on a daily basis.
Yes, thank you. As is been well documented, aviation is one of the industries that has been hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic. We keep hoping that a vaccine will soon be availed so that we can resume air operations normally. As we were informed, currently this disease is treating us abnormally. And once we're able to get a vaccine, we should be able to see the aviation sector recover and hopefully get back to business as usual. As of now, you've asked what Corona is doing to affect the aviation sector. And this being a crime show, I'm sure you're more focused on the aviation security.
Exactly.
And as my colleagues will attest, one of the biggest problems is that the coronavirus has overshadowed the aviation sector. We are happy that the Kenyan government and the Kenyan security apparel are doing all in their power to stay abreast and to keep us safe as a country. And as
passengers.
The passengers are also being taken care of.
That's
and
great.
We are happy about this. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Mr. Frederick Malu. Tonight we have a lot to discuss as far as aviation and security is concerned. But before then, let's prepare our audience to understand what is it all this about aviation security, and we begin by looking at the basis of present day aviation security, where we are, before we go to history and try to look at some of the things that used to happen and what even made some of the interventions to come on board, where we are and where we are focusing. Mr. Dave, you will introduce us on this part of the present day aviation security.
Well, I'd like to start by actually talking and defining to the audience what aviation security is all about.
Yeah.
It is a combination of using human and material factors to safeguard civil aviation, aeroplanes, and installations where aeroplanes and aircraft operate.
Unlawful interference.
You know, you may have unlawful interference in the case of security threats, people trying to, come on board an aircraft unlawfully. So these are measures that have been put in place to protect aeroplanes. Now, in today's case, obviously there are a lot of things that we cannot discuss as they are security sensitive, but a lot has been done even in this COVID period, whereby the safety of the airport, safety of the aircraft, people transiting in and out of it are actually being done.
Let's get also from Mr. Chavda.
So, as Captain Dave has just said, defined aviation security for us and has four core functions. The main functions of aviation security: screening and searching to anybody who is accessing the airport or anywhere around the airport. This includes passengers, workers, baggage handlers, baggage itself, cargo, and all vehicles
So
coming
in
in
this
and
sense,
out.
as you're giving us those people who are usually their cargo, everything is searched. Are you also part of them as a pilot who gets in?
Absolutely. After the 2010 Beijing Convention, which we'll come and talk about later on, one of the requirements was to make sure that the pilots and the crew operating an aircraft are searched to avoid another incident like what we have just mentioned, the 9/11 situation. So yes, everybody is searched. Yes.
Let's look at the history of aviation security, Mr. Frederick Malu, and let our viewers actually understand where did this thing begin and where did it come into the openly that indeed we deserve this security in the aviation industry.
Okay, so what happened was, towards the end of World War II, they found out they had a large number of aircraft that had no purpose, no use, and the world started trying to think, what can we do? Because it would have been a wasted resource, all the planes that were used during the war. So in 1944, there was a Chicago Convention, and that's where they came up with what is called ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization. What is of note is only 52 countries were represented in this convention, and it was not security related whatsoever, although it did lead to the formation of aviation security. So the mandate of ICAO was to assure a safe, secure, and regular operations around the world. The member states and countries signed up to this, and it was backed up by the United Nations. Now, at this convention, on the 26th of April, 1947 to be exact, was when they got the last signature from 26 countries that had refused to endorse the ICAO principles. And they came up with ICAO annexes. There are currently 19 annexes. What is of importance to aviation security was the 17th annex, which dealt with aviation security. So out of all these annexes, there were many with just standard policies and others that had recommended practices. And they dealt with the main problems that were affecting aviation. And thereafter, as it evolved, and as my colleague Captain Chavda just mentioned about the Beijing Convention, there are very many more conventions that came up that we'll go through slowly. But they found out that there were certain problems, they are now known as traditional threats, that were affecting aviation. These were mainly crimes committed on board the aircraft, hijacking, and sabotage. So I think Captain Chavda
Before
can continue.
Captain Chavda comes in, actually you've given us the introduction on the history of what actually began to do with the aviation security, how it evolved, and what gave the need to come here. And before we actually lose our viewers, as I gave a disclaimer at the beginning, that those ones who are saying, bwana, mimi hata kukaribia ndege, sijawahi karibia, ni kuku tu nimewahi kuja karibu nayo. So we want Mr. Dave to bring it out to our viewers to understand why tonight's topic is important to them and how aviation security affects them, those who use planes and even those ones who do not use planes. As we begin from you, Mr. Dave.
Okay, obviously the aircraft can be used against you. And therefore, for the common man, even those who have not been around an aircraft or only managed to see it from a distance, they must remember and understand the aircraft can be used against them if there is a bomb on board or something has gone wrong. The aircraft can actually, end up on them or on their homes, of those residing around the airport or in the vicinity of an airfield. It can be used against them, but they don't think about it. They go about their daily business. But a hijacked aircraft can be used to fly into a building like we witnessed in 9/11. And it affected the common man, those who were walking on the streets of New York, who had nothing to do with the aircraft or being in those offices.
In fact, Mr. Dave, before Captain, sorry, we are all captains, including myself, because I'm now captain to lead this Crime Must Fall show tonight.
Absolutely.
Let's take our viewers back again in history to understand some of these instances, because there are a few that I've mentioned here. Although, unfortunately, even though I've read about them, when they happened, the one that happened in the Lockerbie disaster, I was not born in the year 1988. And the one that happened in the year 2001, I remember I was in class 3. And all of these disasters that came in the aviation industry, which actually spilled out to the entire society, whatever happened in the US also affected Kenya, especially in the war against terror. So, briefly, Mr. Chavda, beginning from you, you will take our viewers through what happened in the 2001, the bomb attack at the World Trade Center, how it happened through the plane, and how necessary our viewers should understand that the plane security concerns all and sundry.
Absolutely.
A brief synopsis of what happened at the World Trade Center involving the plane.
So basically, what the hijackers did in that case is they hijacked 3 aeroplanes at the same time.
That
in
was
the US.
What was the
World-
airport?
World Trade Center.
Which airport?
From various airports. These
Oh, it wasn't one airport.
not one airport.
Different airports.
Different airports, different aeroplanes.
Within the states.
Within the US.
Yes.
They hijacked 3 aeroplanes, and the plan was to attack 3 different places at the same time.
The motive behind it, because I mean Noaz or Muse, viewers still wants to know the motive. What
Certainly.
drove these people
Now,
to come to these planes?
Now, the motive behind this was terrorism related. This was a revenge attack to America from the terrorists sitting in the Middle East, possibly in the Middle East. And this was, the motive was revenge. So they wanted to hit America where it hurts most, aviation being a vulnerable sector. And they took full advantage of it and used 3 aeroplanes, out of which the biggest that we remember was the World Trade Center, where the aeroplane plowed into a building. Actually, the aeroplane was hijacked, commandeered by the hijackers, in fact, flown by the hijackers, and flown into the World Trade Center.
Still on history, Mr. Captain, sorry, I keep
That's
on
all right.
forgetting.
Not
I have
to
to remember
Not to
that
worry, not
you
to
fly
worry.
people on the air. These hijackers, as you talked of the principles, the procedures that are usually involved whenever someone enters a plane, they have to check, this is Omuse, this is Chavda, ABCD, you're not possessing any weapon. How comes that they were able to hijack the entire process in the plane? And secondly, didn't the plane or didn't the captains in that and those 3 planes communicate to the command center that we are under attack?
The aeroplane that went into the World Trade Center, the pilots of that aeroplane hardly had any time to react to this situation. It happened so fast. The hijackers were on board.
And they had weapons?
They had it's like a knife, but it's called a box cutter.
Box cutter.
Mm-hmm.
A box cutter is a very, very sharp blade, which can be used, which is actually a tool. It's not actually a knife. You can't use it really to injure somebody, or at least that was the misconception up to that point. But they used box cutters to force their way onto the flight deck. It is said that they actually killed both the pilots, pulled them out of their seats, took over control of the aircraft, and flew this aeroplane into the World Trade Center.
Before you go there now, you've done a good part in telling our viewers what really happened from the airport to the plane and everything that happened. Now, Mr. Captain Chavda,
Captain Dave.
the plane is leaving to the World Trade Center. Did this plane had a weapon in it, or the fact that it was just plunged into the WTC is what brought it down? And how, scientifically and practically, for our viewers to understand again what
Well,
happened?
the basis over here was they used the aircraft as a weapon. When an aircraft is flying from point A to point B, obviously it is fueled. They took that and used it to their advantage by hijacking the aircraft and actually flying the machine itself into the building. Obviously that created an explosion, started a fire. The World Trade Center has been built many years ago. It perhaps was not as strong as newer buildings in the new age, new world are constructed. Obviously with that intense fire and heat and the explosion, the building eventually crumbled under those intense conditions. As a result, obviously there was people in their offices at that time, those who were in their offices above the point of impact, those who were below maybe were able to escape. But a lot of people were actually caught off guard, you know, because it was fairly early in the morning, 9 a.m.
Now,
when this happened.
Captain Chavda, you'll come in to tell us about the Lockerbie, the Lockerbie disaster of the year 1988. Now, as these three planes were coming to the World Trade Center, you remember the WTC, where it is located, how they're also targeting the Pentagon, where the security matters.
One aircraft was directed
to the Pentagon.
Two went into the World Trade Center, and there was a fourth one that crashed in Pennsylvania.
So, the security intelligence were not able to detect that this plane is headed to the wrong direction. Yes, it was their plane for the US, but they didn't detect that this plane was headed to the...
What they call NORAD was alerted, but perhaps the time frame was not long enough for them to realize what has happened.
So by the time they realize this is what belongs to us is being used to distract or to destroy us by our enemies, but it was too late.
Correct. And if I can take you back one step, those hijackers were actually living in the United States and trained there as pilots. They were there attending flying school. Obviously their motive was very different from most people. Their whole reasoning was to be there was to actually understand how to perhaps the system and you know, how the aircraft is flown. And one fine day they got a chance to do that. They got on board the aircraft. Their weapons were not detected at security. And
because they had learned the system and the art, how the US system operates.
Exactly. And eventually,
they went
eventually they used the aircraft as a weapon of mass destruction.
And thousands of people lost their lives and destruction of property. Many things will be coming into it. Mr. Captain Malu, take us through the Lockerbie disaster. Actually, it was on Christmas 1988. People are celebrating, especially we Christians. It's our time to marry. But at the end of the day, whatever happened has remained in history up to today. And our viewers also will be interested to understand what happened during this Lockerbie disaster in the year 1988.
Okay, so it happened on the 21st of December 1988. And it actually brought, Pan Am at the time was the largest airline in the world. And it actually brought Pan Am to its knees. And that was the beginning of the end of Pan Am. So it was just one of the best examples on why aviation security is very important. What happened is a bag was placed on board the aircraft and as it was going transatlantic, the bomb exploded.
Just within the airport?
No. This is airborne over the city of Lockerbie. That's why it's called the Lockerbie bombing. Now, unlike 9/11, this plane only killed 11 people on the ground. I want you to understand that it was a fluke, so to speak, that it did not explode in a densely populated area. 9/11 ended up killing 2,977 innocent people. This is not counting the terrorists. the Lockerbie bombing killed only 11 on the ground, and if I'm not mistaken, it only killed 207 people on board. 270. So that showed at that point that, number one, explosives, it led to an convention known as the MEX Convention. This was in Montreal, and they found out that explosives had to have certain markings so that they could know where they were made. Nobody knew who had manufactured these certain explosives. So what you have to understand is aviation unfortunately learns from mistakes. From the 9/11 attacks, that's when they thought of putting reinforced doors, which are still in operation up to this date in an aircraft. But it took that attack to lead to that. The bombing in Lockerbie resulted in the marking of explosives. So as you go through history, you see that every time an incident occurs, the aviation industry immediately reacts to it and comes up with a solution.
Many thanks. We take a quick commercial break. We've taken the first part of the show to explain the basis, the history of aviation security. And what is coming out clearly is that this matter affects everyone, because when a plane is hijacked and then it drops in between a city and it falls on you, whether you're using the plane or not, then it will cause harm on you. And the three captains on the show, with myself, the fourth captains, are trying to dig deep into this matter that has been given a blind eye, but it affects you. Keep it on CAC TV as we come on the second part of the show to look into the principles of the security of aviation and both the direct and indirect threats, the way forward, and the opportunities, employment opportunities, and other learning opportunities that are found in aviation security. Do not go far. Theological Education Extension, TEE, is a department of PCA Church. We offer theological studies and other discipleship materials to all people wherever they are as a means of helping them to grow in their faith and to live more meaningful lives. TEE prides itself in producing graduates that are making leaps and bounds in the following courses: Theological Education and Extension TEE, Holistic Nurturing of Children HNC, the Crossing Mentorship course, as well as an academic diploma in Guidance and Psychological Counseling. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we'll hold a virtual graduation on the 12th of September 2020 from 10 a.m. The graduation will be graced by the moderator of the PCA 22nd General Assembly, Reverend Dr. Julius Gwantai Mwamba, and the Vice Chancellor of the Presbyterian University of East Africa, Professor John Mungania. This event will be broadcasted live on CAC TV.
Tunasikitika kutangaza kifo cha Gibson Mugendi Iguna wa huduma za uchunguzi wa maendeleo Alpha House Chuka baada ya kuugua kwa muda mfupi. Gibson ni mtoto wa marehemu Zefania Iguna Nderi na Phyllis Shambumba wa kijiji cha Gaturi huko Kanthiri, eneo la Rubate, County ya Tharaka Nithi. Ni mume mpendwa wa Regina Wawira Mugendi wa Huduma Center Chuka. Mwenda zake alijaliwa watoto Dennis Kiogora, Abigail Mwende, Dennis Mutwiri, David Munene na Blessing Makena. Gibson alijaliwa mjukuu Dasha Makena Kiogora. Gibson Mugendi ni ndugu ya Brett Njeru, Joseph Mutegi, marehemu Jamlik Misheni, Charity Misheni, Evans Murithi, Timothy Mugambi, Margaret Mudhoni, Dina Kathure, Ann Kanini, Daktari Onesmus Munene, Mary Kathiru, Dorcas Kawera, marehemu Felix Mushiri, James Mutembei, Boniface Njagi na Eric Murimi. Mwili wa mwenda zake utaondolewa kwenye chumba cha kuhifadhia maiti cha hospitali ya Chogoria siku ya Jumatano ya tarehe 9 mwezi Septemba mwaka huu 2020 kuanzia saa 4 asubuhi na mazishi kufanyika nyumbani kwake Mutungurini Ndagani huko Chuka. Petero wa kwanza mlango wa 5 mstari wa 10. Na Mungu wa neema yote aliyewaita kuingia katika utukufu wake wa milele katika Kristo, mkisha kuteswa kwa muda kidogo, Yeye mwenyewe atawatengeneza na kuwadhibitisha na kuwatia nguvu. Kutoka runinga ya KAK tunasema makiwa kwa jamaa na marafiki wa mwenda zake.
With COVID-19 pandemic, there are emerging issues. Relationships, family issues, emotional challenges like anxiety and depression, lack of basic necessities like food, house rent, and such. This is the reality on the ground. And therefore, even with the eventual reopening of the economy, it's not going to be a grand comeback, but rather we need to be ready for a gradual process of recovery.
Consequently, the need for sustained mission to the needy remains. So far, we have been able to reach to 32,000 families through the Adopt a Family initiative. We appreciate everyone who has contributed to this effort through the pay bill number and through the local churches across the country in relieving the suffering of thousands.
God giving us another day, we appeal to you to continue partnering with PCA Mission Department by expressing our extraordinary kindness. For kindness goes with hospitality, and hospitality has a great reward. And therefore it is amazing how you've continued to support us in this mission of love and kindness. And I urge and humbly ask all of you to continue contributing in kind through our churches and also through our pay bill number 689549. The account name, you still put your name. Let us continue demonstrating our unusual kindness at these unusual times. God bless you all.
Welcome back, and many thanks for tuning in to Crime Must Fall Show. And just to continue putting these across to you is that we are putting on masks, and this is evidently because of what we are having currently, the COVID-19 pandemic. And tonight we are looking into aviation and security. We have the three captains joined with another one captain, myself, and we are looking into this matter, how it affects us, the types and the history. And gentlemen, before we went for a break, we had just looked at some of the instances that actually brought out the need as to why we need security in the aviation industry, not only to protect those ones who uses the planes like yourself and the passengers, the traders who uses it, but all and sundry. And we had brought out various examples that really indicated that indeed it affects all and sundry. And before we went for quick commercial break, Chavda had something to also add on top of it as far as security of aviation and the society is concerned.
Absolutely, Cornelius. One of the things a lot of people forget is how aviation actually affects all of us. Aviation is actually one of the pillars on which the economy of a country rests.
Mm-hmm.
When aviation is hit, or when aviation becomes a target, the ripple effect of that is felt throughout the country. The confidence, the economic confidence, as well as the security confidence in a country reduces when it is hit by any form of terrorism, more so aviation. All the things that we're importing, exporting by air will suddenly stop coming in and going out. Traders will suffer. So will our tourist industry. So will our corporate, all our corporates, people flying that airline, using it as a corporate means of travel, are going to say, no, you know what, we don't want to fly with this airline because of security. Hence, it affects all of us. Mm-hmm. The travel agent will get affected because he won't be able to sell tickets. The owner of a lodge in Masai Mara is going to get affected because tourists don't want to come to him. The Mama Boga, who is selling the potatoes to the lodge in Masai Mara, is also going to get affected because the tourists are not coming, she cannot sell enough potatoes to the lodge. So all of us are affected when aviation security is affected.
Many thanks, Captain Chavda. Now we come into something here crucial. They say that kuna msemo wa Swahili wanasema ukiona vyaelea jua vimeundwa. Actually, even in this security of aviation, it doesn't operate just on the skies. There are principles that guides it. That when you do this is what you expect as per our rules. And all of us here will mention one principle, beginning from Malu, moving to Dave, then Chavda Captain will add the two, each of them, so that our viewers understand under what principles does aviation security operate from.
Thank you, Cornelius. So the first one is to create a safe and secure aviation operation environment. Very basic. We just want safety and security. Captain Chavda.
Captain Chavda,
So
another principle
of
of aviation. Let's get to Dave. Dave
Captain
to
Dave take that one.
take
All
that one.
right, we can discuss establishment of legislation and procedures. And that goes back to what Captain Malu spoke a little while ago about the annexes that were created and the conventions. As he defined some of those conventions, we could discuss the...
Because actually those principles emanated from those conventions. They
Correct.
say we...
That is where
do this.
legislation was brought about. For example, Tokyo, 1963. You know, there was issues of violence of passengers misbehaving on board. So that that convention actually came about and gave the pilot in command or the captain powers on board the aircraft, whereby the PIC was able to stop a person from flying on the aircraft. He had the sole authority. Obviously, in the years that have gone by, that authority can be passed down to another member of crew, but the captain has the final say, and that is now enshrined in law. And that's why that is one of the procedures and legislative indices that have been used, even in today's current operations.
And to add to that, what Captain Dave said, and that captain and crew member are protected by the law in carrying out that particular duty.
Actually, what is coming out from the captains and to our viewers is that the principles under which these security threats and everything as it concerns to the security of aviation is just to ensure that there is safety and the right thing is happening when it comes to handling of cargo, handling of human beings and all that. Now, there are these threats. We are dealing with threats, and that's why we are here tonight. That's what prompted all of us to leave the places that we were or our comfort zones at such a time of the night to come here and bring out some of these threats. And first of all, we have the direct threats, which comes to you directly and attacks you. And there are those ones which are indirect, which you've mentioned partially, but then now you'll have to expound it in a clear manner so that we get to understand what are these threats that are found in the aviation industry.
Cornelius, let's first start here. You know, we have to first understand what a threat is.
Yeah.
And how it's defined in aviation is it's a measure of likelihood or probability that a terrorist will attempt to attack a particular target within a specific time frame. However, a threat depends on two factors. One is the intent or the desire to attack. Two is their capability. So when a 3-year-old child tells you, I will beat you, you don't take him seriously because he doesn't have the capability.
What if someone will stand behind that 3-year-old with a gun and then they say, Dave, that kid is coming to slap you, and if you attempt to attack back, I'm shooting you.
Wow,
Now that is capability. That now that
making it capable.
Yes,
That has become a capability.
That's capability.
Yes.
That the kid can slap you,
Yes.
or with the support from
Yes,
behind.
correct.
Wonderful.
So you see, And when you talk of a threat, now you have to talk about a risk. And a risk means the threat, which we had said had two factors, and add on it the vulnerability. Are they able to actually execute this attack? That's how you define a risk. So you asked about direct and indirect. That is very true. So a direct threat is, in layman's terms, basically, when you have actual damage or access to the aircraft. It's a directly to the aircraft. And then when you come to indirect threats, it is things that would not necessarily have been a problem. Things like in-flight violence, things like drugs, they're an indirect threat. In Kenya, smuggling of flora and fauna, ivory, the wildlife trophies, that's also an indirect threat. Human trafficking is also an indirect threat, and so is money laundering. So those are the different types of threats. However, these threats are also further divided into two, which is the traditional threats and the emerging threats, right?
Absolutely.
Now, I like what you've brought up, the probability, the capability, the risks that are involved, and all those factors. Now, in most instances, when maybe we're about to go for Easter, we're about to go for Christmas, we start getting those travel advisories, especially coming from the West, that likelihood ABCD may happen, and therefore we are advising our citizens maybe to take caution or to cease traveling to particular countries, especially, you know, we have the best coast in the world, that's the coast of Kenya.
Absolutely.
And the parameters sometimes when such advices comes, because at some point I know we will also get to a capability as a country, Kenya, I don't know whether we are there, that is not the topic for tonight, to also advise our citizens not to go to particular territories because there is likelihood of ABCD to happen.
Right.
As that happens, I want to travel to a particular country or to a particular island with my family, maybe for holiday. So what are these that will show me that indeed this risk or this threat is likely to happen?
Now, this again, okay, this is beyond the scope of our discussion today.
Sure.
Purely because this kind of information comes from national intelligence. And be it national intelligence in Kenya or the USA or Britain or wherever else. But if Kenya today gives an advisory that we advise our citizens not to travel to so-and-so country, that is because the national intelligence
Has advice
has
over
got
that.
information which tells them that maybe it's not a good idea.
Or according to how they've gauged. Now, Captain Dave,
Tell me.
on that, when it reaches to that level, you see, there is something, in fact, before I come to you, I want to bring it to Malu, when he will describe the three types of citizens that we have. Before I come to ask you that question. Because there are those citizens whom when they'll hear of a travel advisory from the government, they'll say the government is a government, I obey that until they advise otherwise, I'm going to heed to what they have advised.
Correct.
But there are those ones who will want to know, ama wanataka kuniharibia mimi kwenda kuchoma nyama Masai Mara. So, let's get from Mr. Captain Malu to tell us actually the dynamics of the citizens and sometimes the dangers that it poses when government gives advisories on matters to do with aviation threats. What are some of the categories of people? You were hinting something as we began.
Okay, so this is actually comes from the Greeks, and they gave the example of three kinds of people in a society. And they say the first kind are the idiots. And they didn't mean stupid people. They meant the normal person who will just refuse to follow rules. They will not comply with the normal society directives. The second category was what they called the tribesmen. These are not necessarily people of one tribe. These are people who aggregate either to a political party, they aggregate to a religion, or like in the case of our country, tribe. And they, no matter what happens, they will stick to the tribe and vote as a bloc. And finally, we've got what is described as the citizens. Now, the citizens will follow the rule of law, and will obey, no matter whether they're being watched or monitored. They will always stay within the confines of the law because they know that is the correct thing to do. Now, when we come into aviation security, it's the same thing. Look at someone who will heed the government's warnings
Advice.
and the advices, and instead of planning to go on holiday to a certain part that has been declared unsafe, they will postpone that trip. That is a citizen.
Or go to a different place.
Correct. That is a model citizen. However, there are some who, like you said, they will say, munatuharibia mpango yetu ya sherehe. Sisi inyeshe, isinyeshe, tunaenda. These are what we call now idiots. And then there are those who, comme si, comme ça. They wait and hear. If so-and-so says yes, they don't go. If they say no, they will go. So these are the three types of people you have in a society. And what we should strive to be in a society is to have model citizens. Yes.
And now something is coming up about technology. That is where we are in the digital era. And maybe before I pose the question, there is this issue of the autopilot, where a plane, I can't describe, actually, I'm a journalist by background, but anyway, where it is believed that a plane can be directed from one point to the other side, maybe to transfer ABCD or to go for war purposes and all that. Now, how comes, or when this happens, how does it really pose either a threat to security of aviation, or it comes in as an advantage over the same?
Okay, so basically, if we're talking from a security point of view, the autopilot is actually a big help to pilots. What it does is it takes away the stress of actually controlling the aeroplane by hand continuously, and using the avionics, it will fly the aeroplane. The autopilot flies the aeroplane for the pilots, and the pilots can sit back and monitor what the autopilot is doing. It doesn't do it on its own. There's a lot of process that goes in before the autopilot can be engaged. But those, again, out of the scope of security. But that is to do with flying. But a lot of things are done, and then the autopilot is engaged. Once the autopilot is engaged, the pilot can take a small breather and say, okay, now I'm monitoring, the autopilot is flying. In the process, should a security or a safety situation crop up, the autopilot is flying the aeroplane, he can actually concentrate or give more concentration towards the situation that is developed. So hence the advantage of autopilot. In addition to autopilot, the new thing that has come up is pilotless drones, pilotless flight. At the moment, it is not being done commercially. When I say commercially, I mean that there are no drones that are flying passengers for a fee. So, but drones are being used, like you said, in war, and are now coming into use even in delivery services or those kind of small services, smaller drones, but doing small domestic work. Drones are pilotless aeroplanes. That means the pilot of that aircraft or airborne vehicle is sitting on the ground controlling it as it cruises through the sky. Different story altogether. Now that can be used in many different ways for many different purposes. Again, due to the sensitivity of this subject, better not to go into too much depth on that, but those are possibilities. Again, laws have been enacted world over with regard to drones, and those laws, if not followed, also have punitive penalties to the point that people can get arrested and jailed.
Now, let's look at some of the measures that are usually put into consideration to ensure that where the planes lands and where the planes takes off are actually safe from any other foreign interference. And this takes me back to some experience I had while at primary school level. we converged at some school where we were being hosted as we were doing some competition within the city. Then that school was next to an air base. Then one morning, when the plane was taking over, a number of pupils whom were being hosted together went next to the fence. Actually, it was a military base
Right.
of an air force. Then a plane was taking off. Then as those ones who manned the place were able to see that we are seeing foreigners. Actually, we were during our break and they were not putting on uniforms. And this
That's
person
correct.
came running with a gun. And at that point, okay, the plane took off, it went, but upon realization later on, these are pupils who are being hosted in the nearby school. This school is being used by the children of those members of the armed forces.
Right.
And actually, it almost brought some commotion and even the confusion. Is there any parameters that are usually taken to ensure that where the planes lands and where they take over off, no people can come there to cause any sort of interference? Suppose these pilots or those ones who are inside saw this person running with a gun, what could have happened at the end of it all?
Absolutely. There, again, going back to the different conventions, laws were enacted by individual countries, and those laws made it mandatory for all airports and airfields to be protected. And that protection had to be provided either by the owner of the airport if it was a private airport, or by the government if it was under the auspices of the government. Now, all airfields, all airports are secured 24 hours throughout the day, year in, year out. And for somebody to be able to get in and do that would be a breach of the security, and obviously a lot of action would follow. Having said that, I'll take you back to when I used to fly charters out of Wilson Airport, and we used to go into Central Africa. In those times, there was a lot of commotion in Central Africa, and we used to, I think Captain Dave, even Captain Malu, we used to go and land at airfields where you would see people crossing the runway like it was a normal road, like it was in the middle of town. There was a market on the airport. So those are things that used to happen also. But I think,
But after the convention, then longer there.
not really, because of the commotion that was there in some of the Central African republics. These things were happening, but now that there is some form of government that has been formed and laws are put into place, those things are reducing.
Many thanks,
But
Captain
yes.
Chavda, because of time.
Certainly.
What really came out as we began, especially from our captain here, Malu, he spoke actually that all these things have been evolving because of history, developments, from one stage to another, and another stage. As something happens, then we realize we need to kazanati hapa, tighten. How can we rate where we are as at now, as far as aviation security is actually concerned? We may not really categorize, but you are free to do so if your line allows you to say that in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, in East Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in America, we can say that on matters concerning aviation security, we are actually 90% assured that we are here, and we are likely to reach 100% assurance, although only God can assure 100%.
You cannot be 90%. In an operation or in aviation, you have to be 100%. You can never have any opportunity for something to go wrong, because it's an industry, like Captain Chavda mentioned earlier on. There is no space for mistakes to happen. You have to be 100% sure, and obviously that is what will give you prominence. You know. Not only does it give the country prominence, but on the world theater, you're recognized as one that can maintain standards. So there is no 90%. It has to be 100%.
Captain Malu, this brings us to something here, a concern, and also some of the comments we hear on the streets most of the times about people talking of air transport is the safest means of transport. Does it correlate with what
That
Captain
is
Dave is saying?
absolutely correct. Statistically speaking, air transport remains the safest mode of transport across board. And like you had said earlier, air transport should not only affect the people who are flying in that plane, it should affect everyone. There is a synonym, we say, see Siri, that we would like the viewers to always remember. See it, suspect it, report it. Because
now, you've actually taken us a step higher as we are coming to the home stretch about the role of the local community on matters to do with intelligence, because a society, as we usually say, doesn't operate in a vacuum, whereby vile tulionwa when you were in that airbase wakati I think someone reported that there are foreigners here, watoto, whom we don't know where they've come from, and you saw action was taken. So the roles, briefly as we come to the end, what are these roles of the local community, saying that we are suspecting ABCD and we are not safe here?
Absolutely, and that role is vital. The security organs of any government, any country, cannot be in every place all the time. Hence, it is in the interest of the people living in and around the airports or in any city to come forward and give that intelligence, because, like we said, if that intelligence is not given in time, in the long run, even they will suffer. Hence, give out intelligence. Be helpful to the government of the day. Come out and tell us, or tell the government, tell the authorities, we suspect ABC is going on here. You might be able to stop something from happening.
Many things. Let's hear
Sorry,
from
just to add on.
If you see
something, report it.
Then lastly, Captain Dave and Malu, what are some of these employment opportunities that comes on board when it comes to aviation and aviation security? Do we have any? Is it open to anyone? And how can people benefit from it?
Obviously, you have to study through a course if you wish to do aviation security as an individual. You know, and it does have employment opportunities. If there is a vibrant airline industry in a nation, the need for aviation security is there. The need for, you know, policing the aviation industry is there. So there's a lot of job opportunities. Likewise, if you do not look after the industry, you are not going to have any job opportunities for anyone, because there will be no airline. There will be no pilots, there will be no crew, there will be no ancillary staff. You know, there's people who provide catering for the aircraft. They're also in a job. So there's a very long trickle-down effect if the industry is not looked after.
Actually, and in 20 seconds, each one of us, you have handled this matter for a long time, and I believe you're still handling it. You interact with it, you know it inside and out. Your parting shots to all those who are involved in this, or who are thinking that they're not supposed to be involved, but it's time that they need to be involved more. Parting shots, beginning from Malu to the end as
just a quick
look at some of the comments here.
What we came out is that an airline supports over 100,000 jobs, directly and indirectly, as Captain Dave has pointed out. So take care of your airline. See Siri, remember see Siri, see it, suspect it, report it, and build your national airline. It is the economic backbone of very many countries. Having a hub pulls in all other industries, from tourism to corporate to business to mining to agriculture, you name it. Build your airline, it will help.
Captain Chavda.
Very good. I think my parting shot here is everybody is affected. Let us pull together. Now, in pulling together, what I really want to bring out is for our passengers. When a passenger walks into an airport, there is a long list of security procedures that he has to follow. My suggestion and my advice is help the security agent do his job efficiently. If he asks you to open your bag, open it happily. You have nothing to hide. Let him be satisfied. That way you are doing your part to keep aviation safe.
Many thanks, and also Mr. Dave, as we
To
look
add on
into
to
some of the
Captain
comments.
Malu and Chavda, security begins with you and me. If we don't look after each other, we cannot look after anything. So, as he mentioned, when in particular to aviation security, the checks and obstacles you face when you enter the airport is for your own good. Board that aircraft knowing that you are safe and you will reach your destination
Safely.
Many thanks, gentlemen. Just to read some of the comments here. Rogers Mosebo, good to see you, Captain Malu, and the crew tuned in from Kariobangi, North Nairobi. The show is very informing. Indeed, aviation security affects us, all of us. John Bayer, our security, our peace and prosperity. Keep up our PCAK. And finally, there is also a comment here, watching with my family from Donholm. He says, a good show. It's been an engaging discussion because many things that even myself never used to know have come to light tonight on matters concerning aviation and security. The three captains, also with another captain here, have been able to lead this discussion in this timely manner. It's happening at a time that 3 days from now, the world will be looking back in the terror attack of the year 2001, the lessons that have been learned, and how much has been invested towards seeing that such is not repeated in the future. We appreciate your feedback and your comments on our social media platforms, on our SMS number, and also on our WhatsApp number. It keeps us going. On behalf of CAC TV, in partnership with Professional Criminologists Association of Kenya, from me, Cornelius Omuse, till next week, God willing, have a very good night. Thank you, guys.